butcher block, making a nice butcher block with all kinds of natural colors from a variety of different woods, mostly scraps. As a woodworker, I get quite a few different, really unique pieces. It's a great way of using those short pieces. And so this video is going to walk you through how to make a butcher block top like this, talk about some of the species. Yes, it also will have a base. Lots of possibilities for a base. I'm assuming most of you are just here for the butcher block. But this is a great addition here for this outdoor kitchen. If you haven't caught that video, you can check that one. But let's jump into it. Use the timestamps if you want to skip on around. But here we go. Butcher block, bar cart, grill cart, what have you. So for my method of gluing up the butcher block, I'm going to have a base. So a plywood base. So I just got this for my birthday, a little track saw, putting this to use. You could obviously cut this on the table saw, but go ahead and cut a plywood sheet. Melamine would work even better, then you wouldn't have to add this tape. This is just sheathing tape. To make sure that the wood doesn't adhere to the wood itself. So you can pry it free. This is great for epoxy river tables and stuff like that. But if you just use a melamine sheet, then you wouldn't need to do that. So you got your base. Now time to mill up all your wood. Now this is mostly scraps, shorter pieces of wood that I can't really do too much with. So I am joining the sides to make it quicker, and then I'm face jointing. You don't have to have a joiner to do this project. It just makes things a little bit quicker. And this 2-in-1 joiner works really, really well. I have a whole video talking about this one. If you're curious about a helical head, 12-inch jointer and planer, combos as both. But I'm getting all my wood flat ahead of time, so then my glue ups are going to be superior. My glue ups will be fine. I can minimize the gaps in between the faces of the boards. We'll talk about getting the ends of the boards fully secure. But anyway, jointed, planed, they're flat on both sides. I talk a lot more about these steps in my cutting board 101 and 102 videos. If you want some more tips on getting a superior glue up for this style of glue up, I can check those out. But anyway, I got both sides flat, and now I'm ripping all of my pieces to size. So for the thickness of my butcher block, I went with about 1 3/4, whatever size you want. So all of these pieces are getting cut to that height, and then they'll all be flipped on their edge and glued up that way. So all these different pieces I milled up to different thicknesses. So some were jointed at 2 inches thick, and then planed to 2 inches thick. Some were like 1 1.25 inches. You can see here I have 5 different sizes of various thicknesses. They're all going to be the same, like 1 3/4 inches tall. But you can see all of those right there at the same thickness. These are all the same thickness, so I'll have a row of woods that matches. And this is a great technique to maximize all of your scraps, especially those really, the various sizes. Now throughout the glue up and kind of laying it out, I did a lot of little cross cuts. So on the other side of the camera, I'm actually doing the pattern making, but I'm just using the cross cut feature here on the table saw. You could do this on a miter saw, but kind of getting those different widths cut. But for the pattern itself, I went ahead and I just started laying out the different pattern. And so really trying to mess around with the colors and, not having too many wood species touching and just get a good variation. But again, that same thickness because I had already pre-sorted all the piles. And there you can see it. It's kind of a mismatch. You could cut it a lot more times and make it a little bit more chaotic. You would just have a lot more end grain to end grain places. For the glue up, I did add these little, boards on the side so I could push everything up against it. So there I can, get it nice and firm, and I could use a little hammer to knock it right in place to kind of square it up. And so I had one surface to work off of. You could get even more involved. All right, the glue up was pretty intense. My son helped out here. We're using Titebond 3. It's a water-based, waterproof glue that I use for cutting boards. Since my butcher block's going to get a lot of use and a lot of washing from time to time with food prep, I wanted to use that. And then we just go ahead and put a ton of glue down. I always err on the side of too much glue. Extra squeeze out is fine. That's where, that way it gets everywhere it needs to. All right, these panel clamps are amazing. I have a video all about these, kind of a DIY, more affordable option. These are incredible. They get a superior glue up. Everything gets really tight and flat. As far as the little gaps, there are going to be some gaps that you're going to have. Let's talk about those here. All right, so once you pull it out of the clamps, you know, there's some glue that's still going to be under there. So this was, I don't know, about 12 hours, but obviously this glue needs to dry. So I usually leave this in the clamps for overnight, you know, give it some time. Really doesn't need that long, but just, you know, better safe than sorry. Now, again, this right here, we got all these gaps. And so you could probably create some kind of system where you have clamps going this way too. I just couldn't figure that out, but you know, I have gaps. Now this is not a cutting board, so this is not gonna have food, you know, obviously there will be some food prep, but I still want to make sure I don't have any gaps. And so there's a couple options. One option is putting some glue in these gaps and then just using some fine sawdust and then just kind of doing a little patch there. So like dark wood here, walnut would be great. Obviously, right here, I probably wouldn't want to do walnut between yellow heart and maple. I want to do some lighter colored wood. Sawdust, that is. Other options, I could just use CA glue. So this is a great option for filling gaps. So Starbond has some different colors. The black is great. I use that for most of my void fills. There is a brown one, some other colors, or you can just do the clear. But you do want to make sure at this point, once you flip it over, you fill in any of those gaps on both sides and do as much gap fill right now before flattening. So once you got your gaps filled, once the glue is fully dried and you don't have any wet glue anymore, then you got to think about flattening. Now, what's great about using those types of clamps, really it's perfect, it's pretty perfectly flat. So you could just use a belt sander and get it pretty flat. You could do a hand plane, that would be an option. Now for me, obviously I do a lot of cutting boards. I would love to use the planer. Now, obviously most of us don't have a planer that's this wide. So one way you could get around that is this is about 24 inches wide. I could do one section and then plane it, and then I could do two separate glue ups. So two different sections, run it through the planer, and then join those two sections together. Another option is making a router sled. So this is just some simple plywood. This one is one I made a while ago. This one would not work for this, it's not wide enough. But what I would do is I would put this on a table. I would have plywood coming up, plywood coming up. And then this would run along that plywood. And I put my router here, I got some little stops here, and then plunge. So just plunge the router down, go back and forth. And so honestly, the router method is probably gonna give you the best results to do a really big wide one, but you could also use a drum sander. That's an option. But for me, I feel like the best, most effective way is actually using a router sled and just use a good flattening bit just to get it back and forth. That's great for large surfaces like this. For me, I have a CNC machine which basically does the same thing. But if you don't have a CNC machine, I highly recommend like looking into some kind of router sled that you could use, especially for end grain cutting boards and other ones. That's a great option. But this, you know, a little bit of plywood, great option. You can see here in this video how I used this before to flatten a tabletop. That works, so that's a great option. But here, we're gonna let this dry and then we're gonna jump on the CNC, get this all flattened. And wouldn't you know it, right after talking about that DIY sled, the next day I found out about this one. So I thought I'd share about it really quick. There's no sponsor in this video, so I'm gonna do a quick little plug on this one. They did send this to me in exchange for affiliate commissions, but I do wanna talk about why I think this is a great solution. Obviously, a $5,000 to $10,000 CNC is probably out of most folks' budget. Even with the CNC though, it takes forever. You have to set it up and it runs really slow and all that. This, you can direct it, you can do so much more. Making your own is great. This one worked way better. I just actually finished flattening a big slab. You can joint wider cutting boards. You can joint bigger things, and then you can use it as a plane or flip it over. So you have more potential for no wobble. You can do bigger cutting boards, bigger butcher blocks. It's not set up for this one, but Anyway, it's got wheels and casters and it rolls. You can adjust it for big bed, all kinds of things. It adjusts the height really, really easily. So you can do really, thick cookies or other thick material. Lots of potential here. So yes, again, I do get that affiliate commission. So if you're interested in buying, I can use the link down below. There is a coupon code to save. It's a great option, and I'm really, really pleased with it. And I'll be using this a lot in the future. And honestly, for flattening, I'll be using this as opposed to the CNC. It's just faster, easier to set up, and more potential. I can go even wider and bigger than my CNC. So check it out. Check it out. All right, back to some void filling. So again, some wood glue, some sawdust, or that CA glue works really well. But now's the time to make sure any of those exposed cracks or holes get filled in, give it time to dry, and then you can flatten it. So again, I do recommend you using a different method. I have the CNC and it works. It just takes a long time. So you have to get it set up, have to get everything in. It's a great tool. I love it. I have quite a few videos of the potential, but it is an expensive tool. And so if you don't have a CNC, that router sled is a great option. But here you can see it's doing the same idea, but this is real time. This is how fast it's moving. You could probably bump it up a little bit. It does a great job, but it depends on how many passes. Again, because we use those panel clamps, it was pretty flat. So it didn't have to remove as much. I was able to do it all in one pass. I didn't have to do multiple passes. I did find a couple little gaps as I went throughout, and I did fill it with some CA glue. All right, on to the base. No plans for this. You can take a quick look at how I did it. These were my measurements for my cart. You can customize it however you want, but this might give you an idea, a starting place. If you're trying to look where we're at, you can see that galvanized metal is just kind of an overlap right there. That's the dotted color with the overlap kind of right over there, just for my measurements. Again, sorry, no plans. Have fun with it. You can make your own. So chopping up the wood for the base, we're still in our outdoor build, this big patio cover. If you haven't seen that patio cover video, it's pretty fun, pretty awesome. You can check that out. Some lots of content on that. We're using pocket holes. It's a great project. My 10-year-old here, he's been using pocket holes since he was about 4. He loves doing them, pretty pro at it. Lots of different jigs. Links to all the tools I use down below. But pocket holes just make things really quick. I've done this for a lot of my outdoor builds, especially outdoor furniture. Just really attaches well. Use the 2.5-inch outdoor screws, and you don't see those screws. They're on the inside. It's a nice clean look. Okay, I am going to go ahead and trim some of these treated boards, just a different look, a different aesthetic. You don't have to do this at all. You do not have to have a bandsaw. I just wanted it a little bit recessed for the look that I was going for. I went with 4x4 pressure treated posts. Everything is kind of tying together with this big outdoor build. And so those pocket holes, just adding the screws to the top, went ahead with 3 different boards, different sizes. Just that was the look we went for to support the corrugated metal, but also just a look for the shelves inside. All right, just measures. Having a little scrap piece of wood is great for a reference point, just to get that uniform height. So cut them all to the right height. I have a lot of videos showing shop carts, so if you want a slower version of how to make this kind of build, check out some of my shop cart videos. I have a lot on those with this process. All right, so now I got my top on, it's flat. I'm gonna flatten it. I'm using that track saw again. This is so handy. Just have a nice, clean, straight line cut. This works great. And so trimmed it up, got it all square, and then we're on to some sanding. So for all the rough sanding on the edge, I went with this turbo Bosch turbo mode, 80 grit, got everything kind of cleaned up. Even though the CNC did a good job, still need to flatten a bit. So I go with 80 grit to get everything nice and clean on both sides on the end grain. Then I did the router. So I did just a slight 1/8 inch radius round over. Might have been even smaller, can't quite remember. But I do 80 grit, then I do 120 grit. And then I do 150 grit. Now I'm switching over to my other sander. This is my favorite sander, the Surf Prep, just because of all of their, well, one, the sander itself is fantastic. It works really well, built into this air compressor, to this dust collector. But then they have all their foam to really maintain those edges. Their abrasives are great, so you don't have to do any hand sanding. I hardly do any hand sanding anymore on boards or tables like this. But anyway, got everything sanded. And then, yeah, I'm using the air compressor right now. Some of these woods, it really trapped in quite a bit, like the wenge, some of the oak. A lot of that sawdust got, in there. So this is a great practice to have before you raise the grain, is to blow it out. So I'm raising the grain like I do on my cutting boards. It's just wet, wiping everything down, just getting it wet, and this raises all the fibers of the wood up. So I've sanded up to 150 grit, and now all the fibers are raised again. And then I'm gonna let it dry, and then I'll sand it to 220. So now I'm sanding at 220 here, using that Surf Prep. Again, it's got that foam backer, so that fine, super fine, kind of nice and smooth. And now, again, blowing off all of that sawdust, all those little dust particles to get a superior finish. Okay, let's talk finish. Adding finish to your butcher block. All right, so many options, quite a few more than listed here. Here are just some of the typical ones. So you could do something like a boiled linseed oil, you could do a Danish oil, all the different oils. I would not recommend mineral oil. It doesn't cure, it's not gonna last. You could do something like this. Now again, your butcher block, any finish, once it fully cures, is really food safe. So if you're doing foods directly on it, if you're doing, rolling out dough or whatnot, once it's fully cured, it should be safe. So that is an option. If you're gonna go the oil route, I would recommend doing tongue oil. Tongue oil is fantastic. Over time, it's a little bit more time to build up the layers, but it is fantastic. And I really recommend getting a pure tongue oil. And then you could thin it out with different citrus solvents. They do make this in a half and half. It's just going to get deeper penetration. This is probably going to give you the most protection and the easiest maintenance is doing tongue oil. Another option, I've used this quite a bit. This is tried and true. It's actually a different type of linseed oil, fully food safe. Once it cures, this is great. A couple coats, pretty easy maintenance. This is a great one. Osmo. So Osmo is a hard wax. I love this stuff. So this is the Poly X. This works amazing on tabletops. Pretty easy maintenance, but it's gonna give you actually a really good, a decent sheen, a lot of protection. It's gonna last you a long while. But they also have this other product called Top Oil. And this is fully food safe. This is great for cutting boards and all kinds of different things. And I've been wanting to use this for a while. So this is what we're gonna use here in this video. I'll just do a couple coats of this. Fully food safe, no worries whatsoever. Again, these are also once they've cured, but this is what we're gonna go with. So this top oil is great, I love it. But here you can just see that color reveal. This is what woodworkers, especially those of us who work with exotics and different hardwoods, this is what we live for. This moment, my gosh, all those natural colors come to life. So this is so fun to use for scraps, right? You can use all kinds of different colors and just some really cool possibilities. And this is actually a really cool, fun thing that I actually made for myself. So you could make one of these as just like an outfeed table in your garage or, a table in your house. Have fun with it. But the oil, you're just using a light white scouring pad and just, buffing everything, not a lot. And then you would just want to buff in any excess oil and then get it nice and shimmery like so. And so you just put a little bit on, you buff it in, and then you wipe it off, and then you can use those white non-woven pads. I attached that to the Surf Prep just to buff everything in, or you could use a buffer, but great results. All right, so for the corrugated metal, so many ways to do this. Obviously, you could do the siding on the cart with anything. You could do cedar siding. So on my full patio cover video, talked a lot more about this. This is a great material. It's not gonna rust, it looks great. So you could just use some aviation snips. These work really well. Getting a straight line can be a little bit tricky. And so in that other video, when I was cutting all of these sheets, I actually cut, I think, like 10 at the same time because it's such a thin gauge, is actually using a metal cutting blade on the circular saw. So actually, this little wood storage thing back here. Made this about 9 years ago, and that's how I cut that metal. So it's just a metal cutting blade here, and I'm going to use this little track saw. So this is a great one. Just with any circular saw, it'll adapt, or you could get, you know, like another track saw like you saw earlier in the video, that Wen one, but you're going to have to sub out the blade, making sure you have the right size. So we're going to go ahead and measure this, cut this to size, and start laying it up on the cart. So the saw is pretty slick, makes quick work of it. I do recommend wearing a face shield, not just the glasses. There are little metal particles that will go everywhere, and just be aware of where they're going to go for cleanup so you don't have a mess. But nice straight line, quick cut, metal blade, highly recommend. So attaching the galvanized metal in here, quite a few ways to do it. Now I'm going to add another little stretcher here. So if you were just going to go straight here, you'd want to use the self-tapping screws from metal to wood, like I used on the roof of this structure. But just to kind of hold it in place, I'm just using 1 1/4 inch nails. I used this in a planter video I did a couple years ago. Just a temporary hold, and then when I add the other things, see, it's not going to hold it completely. It's just going to hold it in place, kind of set of hands. Anyway, and then add the screws. So again, this is just really like a set of clamps. Just quickly add it on with the pin nails, and then go ahead and screw, you know, the wood into place. You definitely want to do some pre-drilling. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But then I'm adding some leveling feet right now. I have a super sloped patio, so even though I love that base of that big 4x4 for all that weight, the leveling feet were a must for my space. Had to do a lot of leveling, and I've been using it actually for a couple weeks now, and no issue with these leveling feet. So you can check out those leveling feet if you need that for your space. Now I'm using those roof screws that I use for this outdoor build. Just kind of they're self-tapping, go through the metal to wood. Pretty easy, but this is just going to give a little bit more secure than just doing a screw or a nail on the pin nailer. And so just went ahead and attached the metal to the wood, stronger hold. So I'm acting like a noob here. I know better. So splitting wood on this thin of wood. If it's a 2x4, you don't have to pre-drill. This kind of thin stuff, you want to do a 1/8 inch pre-drill. Obviously here in the center was fine, but here so close to the end grain, that's going to happen. So I'm going to go and back these screws out. And then we're going to put in a new board that's clean, looks a little nicer, and we are going to pre-drill. We're going to drop boards on my face. Little bit of humility here. Whoopsie daisy. All right, I am going to go just dead center right there. I want the screw to go through the corrugated metal as well. Oh, you can see right there. All right, so now that I got that, we'll start with the center. Get a nice secure hold. All right, and just rinse and repeat. Same idea, going throughout, just adding the screws here, and these screws will go through the wood straight in and through the metal into the wood. All right, shelves, I'm just going ahead and using some 2x4s for little reference points. Use the jigsaw, cut it to size just so I got those little notches, and then a sheet of plywood just fits into place like so. You could definitely screw this down and attach it fully, have a permanent hold. You also could consider, you know, again, it just depends on what you're making this for. You can see here, it doesn't quite come out all the way here on that 4x4, so I could make it to come out further, just whatever you're looking for your build. Well, there you have it. We've got a butcher block, got a grill cart. More additions coming, can keep customizing that. If this video provided value for you, please consider subscribing to see more videos like this. This is fun, right? I'll make a lot of different things like this, cutting boards, all kinds of things. And yes, this outdoor kitchen we just built, the whole patio cover, bigger structure than normal. Normally it's smaller things, but a variety of projects. Also a little bit of lasers, a little bit of CNC, a little bit of tools, just a wide variety. And so hopefully this added value and gives you some ideas, tips. My gosh, if you have some ideas of how to, you know, avoid, you know, again, thought about different clamping systems to get all that pressure this way, just a lot going on. And probably, you know, if you really want no gaps and no seams whatsoever, then I would do it in 2 different sections or 2 or 3 sections and then put them together just so a little bit more control so you're not chasing the glue before it dries and all that good stuff. All right, links down below if you want to see any of the tools, accessories, whatnot. Thank you for watching. Until next time, take care.